Iran, the fifth richest country in the world in terms of natural resources, has some of the world's largest deposits of oil and natural gas reserves. In fact, it has almost all essential resources in the world, and in large amounts too. In agriculture, Iran ranks among the top 10 countries in the world in production of 1/3 of the world's agricultural products. It is also interesting that despite having just 1% of the world's population, Iran houses more than 7% of the world's mineral resources. And so, with all these endowments, you would expect that the country would have one of the strongest and most enviable economies in the world, as well as the most comfortable citizens. But sadly, this is not the case. Before starting, make sure to click the like and subscribe buttons to stay updated with the latest content. In fact, in early 2022, 30% of Iran's households were living below the poverty line. If you think that is really terrible, wait for it then. Because other reports reveal even more alarming figures. In February 2023, the value of Iran's currency sank to an all-time low, with US dollars trading at more than 600,000 rials in the free market, from a mere 50,000 rials in 2018. This massive fall perhaps already summarizes the state of Iran's economy. Also, the official inflation rate currently stands at 53.4%, and inflation on food products at an alarming 71.5%. In addition, given the Iranian government's track record on reporting inaccurate data on economic metrics, we can only assume the country is in a worse state than is accounted for. Yet, the reality of life in a country battered by devastating sanctions and government neglect is still not fully encapsulated by these statistics, since people who are not officially considered as living in poverty also continue to struggle to cope with the rapid pace of inflation and find it difficult to make ends meet. Why is this so? First and foremost, it must be acknowledged that Iran's adversities are, sadly, of its own making, and that the country's growth and development is not beyond what its authorities allow. While it is easy to cite the economic sanctions the country is under as one of the major contributors to its pathetic state, the reasons for the sanctions should not be forgotten. The self-inflicted international isolation the country has chosen, which was born from a practice of allowing ideology to trump national interest in decision-making, is what has resulted in the Iranian economy becoming a shaky house of cards ruled by unpredictability. This has caused the country to live like a third war nation. Because aside the fact that foreign investment is rare and is often unwelcome, Iran is not capable of conducting regular trade with partners worldwide to procure what it needs and to sell its services and products to generate revenue. This is not because Iran does not conduct foreign trade, but because the economy is so separated from the international banking and financial systems, and because the bulk of trade happens on the black market. As a result of this, the country loses substantial sums of money in trying to bypass sanctions. In 2016, for example, it was reported that sanctions increased the cost of trade with Iran by 15%, and that removing them would save $15 billion in extra expenditures each year. In fact, the country has lost over $400 billion in total from working to bypass sanctions, which in turn has generated significant corruption. Now, funds that should be used to alleviate poverty, diversify the economy, and invest in critical infrastructure, healthcare, and education are being spent to enable basic trade that has been made illicit under the sanctions. How did Iran get into such terrible mess in the first place? Let's see. It happened in 2006 after the International Atomic Energy Agency found that Iran's government had failed to comply with nuclear weapon non-proliferation agreements. So the United Nations imposed sanctions against Iran. The sanctions introduced embargoes on materials used in the development of nuclear weapons. As if that was not enough, the United Nations decided to target Iran's oil and financial services sectors with new sanctions measures in 2010. While Iran was already weighed down under the burden of the United Nations punishments, the European Union hinted that a nation who took pleasure in the violation of human rights could not be punished enough. So it pursued its own sanctions against Iran. The European Union started by imposing sanctions that froze the assets of individuals associated with Iran's nuclear weapons program, and continued by prohibiting trade with all Iranian banks and financial institutions, and restricting trade with a range of Iranian industrial sectors, including oil, gas, and petrochemicals. Then, later in 2012, the European Union introduced a new oil and petrochemical product embargo on Iran and froze assets relating to Iran's central bank. No doubt these sanctions, which have blocked oil sales, trade, financial transactions, technology transfer, and foreign direct investment, have inflicted severe pain on the Iranian economy. It is worse because, well, the Iranian government is also well known for mismanagement. These combined is what caused the Iranian economy to contract by about 6% and 6.8% in 2018 and 2019, when the global economy registered growth of 3% and 4%, respectively. Also, by blocking foreign direct investments and discouraging foreign investors and companies from doing business in the country, sanctions have indirectly contributed to the normalization of corruption and the worsening of the business environment in Iran. This is because the involvement of foreign investors and business partners often contributes to greater transparency, stronger rule of law, and more effective and efficient institutions. In case you're thinking natural resources are the only assets Iran has, you're not totally correct. Iran has a pool of young and vibrant labor force. With a population of about 85 million, notably the 18th largest in the world, half of its people are below the age of 30. Giving the country a large and young domestic consumer market and labor force. In fact, in the past 2 decades, Iran's labor force has become increasingly well-educated such that the adult literacy rate is near 90%, compared to a regional average of about 80%. More importantly, nearly 70% of Iran's labor force has a university-level education, with young Iranian women being on the same level with men in terms of educational attainment. However, for cultural reasons, anchored on the traditional roles Iranian women are expected to play, only half of the Iranian women with advanced education participate in the labor force, while this figure stands at more than 80% for men. But in the past few years, labor market conditions in Iran have improved significantly in women's favor, and policies aimed at encouraging greater female participation, which would invariably benefit the Iranian economy by tapping into the large number of university-educated females who remain outside the labor force, have begun. This is because, after 4 decades of economic isolation from the rest of the world, the Iranian consumer market has been on the lookout for any opportunity that would open its doors to global consumer brands and trends. Iran's young, highly educated, and globally aware population is no doubt a focal point for this. Finally, Iran has necessary infrastructure to support its growth, along with an enviable geographical location. With a 100% electrification rate and a vast network of power plants, electricity grids, natural gas lines, roads, railroads, airports, and ports in both the north and south of the country, Iran has the necessary infrastructure to support a growing and dynamic economy. Not only that, also, its access to open waters and strategic location as a gateway between the Middle East and Central and Southwest Asia has made Iran an important partner in Russia's North-South trade corridor, playing a central role in China's massive One Belt, One Road initiative, which involves over 1,700 infrastructure projects and investment of over $1 trillion in 70 countries in Asia, Europe, and Africa. Yet with all these privileges and opportunities, Iran has continued to lag behind in economic growth and development. Economic mismanagement, widespread corruption, weak legal and institutional capacity, and unfavorable business regulations, alongside the unprecedented U.S. financial and economic sanctions and the coronavirus pandemic, have no doubt worked together to cripple the Iranian economy. However, with a highly educated and vibrant population, its strategic location on the Persian Gulf, as well as vast reserves of energy and other natural resources, Iran's economy has incredible potential waiting to be unlocked. But this would only be possible if negotiations are made that would roll back the sanctions and if meaningful steps are also taken to address domestic impediments. This is the story of how Iran has chosen poverty over massive prosperity. While the authorities are to blame, we can only but pity its rather unfortunate citizens. Do you want to know how the negotiations go? Then subscribe to this channel. Also, please like this video. See you in the comments.